All right, today is the last time we're going to be going over anything special for databases, other than probably, I guess, Monday, when I'll give you your last assignment and I'll go over that. You know, that's going to be the last regular lecture. I will go over it like I did the other day, probably next Wednesday, the second spreadsheet. When I say spreadsheet, I should say worksheet, the SQL worksheet. Everyone's was graded. I sent you an email where I sent you your worksheet back, and I got comments on the worksheet. All right, a lot of you did it in red like I did it, so what I did was the comments I made, I kept them in red, but I underlined them so you could see what was there. All right, the grade book has been updated, so you should be able to see exactly where you stand in here right now. All right, so what I want to do is I only want to spend literally about 10 minutes going over this. I'm not going to go over it in detail like I've done the other ones. Whatever you get for an assignment, you won't have to do this. All right, but I just wanted to show it to you. All right, it's not complete. It's fine the way it is. But then I've got kind of an in-class assignment for you, and I'm going to give you, I don't know if this is fair or not, but I'm going to give you about 15 minutes. What I want you to do is I want you to look through the second worksheet. Okay? And we're going to do 3 of the problems as a class. You pick out the 3. I don't care. But I'm not, when I say the 3, that's 1 through 12, where I ask you to write any query you want with 2 tables, 3, 4, 5 tables. Those we're not going to do. We already did one of those the other day where we did that query with a bunch of tables. All right, I think we did 6 or something like that. So I will ask, and we'll do it by vote. Maybe that's not fair, but that's the only way I can think of doing it. So I'll say how many people, we'll go through all 12, and I'll take votes. Okay, if you don't care, then you won't vote. I guess that's up to you. All right, so this last example here is on query parameters, and I mentioned this the other day. The big thing about using a query parameter or query parameters is the fact that you are able to do things while the program is running. What do I mean? Well, let's just take a look at it. Let me run this for you. Okay, so look, if you look up on the screen here, it says enter a social security number. All right, I'll put in Paul's. So it's 876-67-1234. And I hit enter, and you can see what happens. All right. Now, is that grand and glorious? No. I mean, was social security number the best field to use? It worked. All right. What I eventually want us to build toward is not that, but what I really eventually want us to build toward is more where we can put in here is a product number or a vendor number or something like that. All right, where we will have more of a database-driven site. We will be doing more of that stuff next semester. All right, in many ways, you have this stuff shoved down your throat this semester. And one thing I learned after grading these, spending the last 2 days grading these worksheets, is I need to spend more time saying, just getting you memorized. All right, what's the command to do to print out all these records? What's the command to do to print out all these records where this criteria is true? And I need to give you like 100 queries before I give you an assignment. Because maybe I just thought that you understood it more than you did, or maybe I made it a lot harder than I thought it was. I don't know. All right. Overall, the average grade on here was the lowest of anything I've ever given. Okay, the average grade was a D. Okay. All right. So to talk about this and to go over this, like I said, SQL queries can accept arguments. They begin with the @ sign. So if we look at this one, for example, all right, select star from product where price is less than price value. These are just different examples. Price value would be something that you would pass in. Possibly, again, you would, like we just showed, you would put it in a text box or a list box or something else, and you choose that, click a button or do whatever, and boom, it would show you all the products that met that criteria. Does that make sense? But again, the idea is you do it on the fly. And when you think about it, People, if you're creating a database-driven application, that's what people want. All right? You may or may not have heard me talk like this before, but it's interesting when I've helped people get internships in the past, especially when it's a brand new startup company and the people want them to create a website. What do you want? Well, I don't know. What they know is what they don't want. Seriously. So a lot of times what happens is I'll ask people, go out to your competitors, see what you like. I mean, because if you're doing a brand new startup business, chances are somebody else is already doing it, regardless of what it is. So go out there and say, hey, I'd sort of like it to be based off of this one. There'll be a lot of changes, but I'd sort of like it to be like that. Well, that gives you a baseline to get going. In much the same way, when you're doing this, you don't know what somebody might be asking for. All right, so you want to take this and you want to make it as interactive as possible. So that's an example with one query parameter. Here's another example with two query parameters, where you could pass in a price and you could pass in a number of units, and both those criteria would have to be met. Again, these queries can be as simple as necessary or as complex as necessary. All right, when you think about it, the queries that I've shown you in here, in these last few days, none of them have been very hard. We haven't done a join. They've all been fairly easy. This has been the hardest one because they've got this goofy symbol on here. But the queries are much easier than the ones that we've been doing. Next semester, we will combine this. We will write complex queries along with basically taking our answers, and rather than having the answers appear, for example, like I just showed you like this, we're going to throw it into a website. All right, that's what we're moving towards, because like I said, in many ways the class next semester, I think it's AWD1100, and it's got a weird name. It's called something like Web Databases with .NET or something like that. All right, but it's kind of a combination of your first two classes that you've taken. We're going to go back, we're going to look at some HTML, we're going to look at some CSS, we're going to look at some JavaScript, we'll look at jQuery, which we didn't really look at last semester, we'll look some more at Bootstrap. And then you'll learn how to use ASP.NET, and ASP.NET isn't really a language so much. You can use ASP.NET, typically you use it with C#, but you combine it to be able to create websites, and that's what we'll be doing next semester. Again, I don't want to sit and read this to you, but what happens in this particular tutorial is, as it says, we create a data grid view, and not only is there a data grid view, but then on the bottom here, and hopefully I guess you can see all that, this is inside of a group box. So there's a label here, there's a text box here, and there's a button here. All right, and the button, you're supposed to put in something here and click search. Well, notice I have no criteria in there, so it doesn't find anything. I don't think I have anyone with a 111-11-1111. All right? I don't. So you can see that. Now, it could have been set up so if it didn't find anything, we could have printed out a message box or something else. It just is showing nothing. All right? That's not a problem. Then there's a button here to show all your items again. And I did set it up because I've kind of been pulling away from that. If you notice, if I come in and I put in 111-22-3333, I already showed you I can hit search. Okay, I can also just hit enter because I set the accept button up. All right, to show all the items, I can either click here or I can hit the escape key because I've got the cancel button set up. All right, I set it up so that when the program runs, I wrote a real little routine. It literally had 2 lines in it that was called get ready, that cleared out anything that was in here and put the cursor there. Okay, the tab order was already set. Sometimes you're going to find that out, that the tab order is kind of hinky when you start working with database things, because sometimes it looks at everything as one big control, and sometimes it breaks it up into different pieces of one control. So this might be control 1, other times it'll be 1.1, another part will be 1.2, etc. All right. Oops. So this was all the same. I just copied it to Acme Test 7, created the connection, Okay, brought in the data sources window, then set up a data grid view, nothing new there. Then after setting up the data grid view, I put this stuff in there. So it was a group box, and I didn't even put a name in there, but then there was a text box, search text box, a button, search button, another button, show all button. So if you look in here, again, the search button will, as it says, when you click it, it's the argument that gets passed to that SQL. It's the parameter in the parameter query. All right. And whatever meets that criteria is going to be displayed in the grid view. The show all button basically just refills or repopulates the data grid view. All right. So this told about how to do it. It's pretty simple, similar to stuff we've done in the past. The only difference again is in here. All right. And to break that down, where it says like, well, what that means is, you know what the percent sign means. It means anything followed by our value followed by anything. So in other words, what it's doing is it's grabbing anything that you put into that text box. That's what we're telling it right here. That becomes the query parameter. All right? And after we do that, we do something very similar to, we fill it up basically like we did yesterday. All right, it called it search description, and not much code, a whopping 2 lines. This is the line of code that gets put in when you click the search description button. Again, it's saying use the table adapter, all right, grab whatever is in the text box and use that to fill up the grid view. In English, that's what it's saying. And right here, this is saying fill up the grid view and fill it up with everything in the employees table. All right, very similar to the stuff we did yesterday. And that's it. All right, so like I said, there wasn't much in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass this around. I think I put it on here, but I'm going to double check. And so you'll all have a copy of it. All right. Again, I'm not going to do anything with query parameters for your assignment. Okay, so there won't be anything from this. And as far as what's left, not that one. Okay, what I want you to do now is look through problems 1 through 12 on your second worksheet. All right, so on SQL worksheet 2. And as I mentioned, I cut these off the other day, that you only have to do the query that joins 2, 3, 4, and 5 tables together. All right. I just made everything worth 2 points. And as it says up on the top here, I thought it said that. All right. I don't know what, I put it on the answer page, not on this page. But I'll fix this one too, so. 3 points each equal 48 points, plus 2 bonus points. But you have to make an attempt. Many of you, if you've got problems, I hope I don't seem that standoffish to you, that if you've got problems with stuff, you have to ask. And then I'm willing to go over something like that in class. But there were a lot of people that didn't do a lot of the problems, especially the some of the stuff in the middle. All right, you didn't do 3 or 4 questions. Well, if you didn't do 4 questions, and each question was worth 2 points, you lost 8 points right there. All right, I didn't want to see that happen any more than you wanted to see that happen. Okay, so take about 10 or 15 minutes. I'm just going to pause the video, and that's what I'll do is I'm going to write up on the board 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And we're going to do a vote. And if Ethan says, you got to do number 3, and everybody else does, then we'll do number 3. All right, so you can pick out any 3 you want. The other thing that'll do is it'll make sure everybody gets at least a 9 on the assignment. All right? Tiffany had to go home because she needed to get a gray shirt on. See that? Got it all here, there, then it stops. All right. So like I said, I'm just going to pause this right now. All right, the first thing, just so you all see this, it's coming up right now. They're having a seminar on overcoming test anxiety 2 weeks from today here in the other building from 11 to 1. So I don't know if any of you have test anxiety. I really don't know. But if you do, all right, that's what it's for. Okay? David Markowitz, who has been here before, the gentleman who is the counselor, he'll be the presenter. And there it is. It's called Overcoming Test Anxiety, and in Wentzville, it'll be May 4th, 11 to 1 in the small hall carpentry building. I'll try to remind you of that the day before. I don't know if you need to sign up or not. I have no idea. All right? All right. So number 2, show a query that shows the total number of orders and the associated employee first name and last name grouped by employee ID and ordered by total number of orders descending. How many total orders were there? You must use a roll-up or manually calculate the answer. The reason I put it in there like that you must use a roll-up or manually calculate the answer is, unless, if you've had success with it, fine. But I could not get the roll-up to work with PHP-MyAdmin. It always gave me errors. It worked fine when I did it using the console window. I had no problem with it. But I take the same query that I had that worked in the console window and paste it into PHP-MyAdmin, and then it didn't work. So I don't know what the problem was. Let me start up XAMPP. And we'll start up both PHP-MyAdmin and the console window. Now, what's important to me, and I know you say, oh yeah, you got to say that you're a teacher, whatever, but not that you key this stuff in, but that you have an understanding of what it's doing. Because I can put all 4 of them up there and you can all key them in. Boom, you get 12 points. So what? If you don't understand what it's doing you no good. All right? So, like I said, we'll start with this one, and I'll show you how I did it. All right? So the first thing that we said, see, I think I can make that bigger, can I? Yep. All right. Is, well, it's going to be a select statement. I'm not going to put in anything in capital letters. So select, all right, the system will put it in the capital letters. And what do we want here? All right, we want the total number of orders. If we want the total number of orders, we're going to use a count. Does that make sense to everyone? Hopefully by now that does. All right. So I said count of, and I again, some of you have said to me, you like to put the whole table name there, which is fine. It really and truly doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you put the whole table name there or if you put O dot like I've done. And you know the only time technically you have to do that, the only time that technically you have to preface it with either the name of the table or an alias is if you've got the same field with the same name in 2 different tables. That said, I know people who do this for a living, and they write every one. Colin, you mentioned to me the other day, you said, is it okay here if I put in orders dot? I know people who do this. That's what they do with every table. Even if they're only using 1 table, they still do it that way. And I said, well, why do you do that? Because in the future, I know that I'm going to be asked to expand this query. I'm positive that I will be. Now I've already got that done where I don't have to worry about writing that stuff again. That kind of an idea. All right? So we want that. Then we want the first name. Now, this is what I call mine. I've got EMP first name. Yours might just be called first name. That makes sense, right? Okay? The version that I'm using right now of my database, I prefaced everything with EMP for the employee, etc. Well, for some reason, it's not letting me type right now. There we go. All right, those are the three things, the three pieces of information that we need. We know we need them from two different tables, so we'll have from, and there'll be orders, and we're going to alias that as O, and there will be employees, and we're going to alias that as E. I'm asking this. Is there anything in this query thus far that doesn't make sense? All right. If we did this right now, if we did it like this, we'd have a Cartesian product join, correct? And some of you got that wrong on the first worksheet. That's, literally, if I just do this right now and put a semicolon here, all right? And let me grab all of it because this isn't going to do me much good. But if I do that and then I say go, that would be wrong. All right? Well, it's saying it doesn't like, oh, no database select. That probably would have been good to come in here and select the database first, wouldn't it? But if I come through here and do this now and click go, all right, number of orders. It says it went successfully. Current selection does not contain a unique column. So there's something there it doesn't like. It gave me back one record, but it's not what I want. All right. The point is, some of you have come up to me in class or have emailed me and have said, I tried doing this and it's coming back with like 100,000 orders or 100, whatever. That's not right. All right. You're doing something wrong. What are you doing wrong? I'd have to see it to know for sure what you're doing wrong, but you're doing something wrong. Now again, some of you, when you went in here, you put the ticks around these names, etc. That's all okay. It doesn't really matter all that much whether you do that or whether you don't do that. All right? Again, I'm more old school the way that I write these joins, so to me this makes the most sense to say O.employee ID equals E.employee ID. Now, if you disagree with that and you say, it makes more sense to say join on, etc., then do that. It's not a problem. All right? That's the kind of thing I was looking for when I told you to give me two unique queries, all right, on those problems. So now, if I do this, what do I have? Well, I get a count of my order numbers. Okay, I get the employee's first name, I get the employee's last name. I don't know if this will work now or not. I'm not done though. All right. It says your query was successful. And it only gave me the last one. Well, that isn't what I want. So again, it's pretty obvious there that there's something that's still missing in here. All right, so that's what we have so far. So what's left? Well, we have to do the group by, right? And we were supposed to group by, well, it says here, group by employee ID. So it shouldn't matter, since there's two employee IDs, which one I use. But I just use the employee one. That still isn't all of it, but it's almost done now. So it's still not done. All right. Well, now notice what I have. That's pretty good. I've got everything, but it says ordered by total number of orders in descending order. So in other words, I've got to do an order by here. Now, what used to happen, okay? What used to happen, and it doesn't appear to work anymore, but I'm going to try it. All right? In older versions of MySQL, once you alias something like this, okay, I actually want to do the order by the count, don't I? All right? It used to be that you could use the alias. So I could say order by, and I could say that, and it would work. Okay, so I'd put that in there, and I think it was in descending order. Oops. As far as I can tell, that's not in order. Okay, it didn't give me an error message, but it didn't like it either. All right, so basically it was something in there that, as far as I could tell, that it didn't understand. So instead of ordering it by this in descending order, I come back and bring my count in again. Put that in descending order. Let's try that. And now it is in descending order by count. All right. Now the only other thing is, because this is the whole query right here. That's the whole query right there. All right. I'll make it smaller. I want it to line up somewhat. Okay, so that's everything. But when you come to the bottom here and you say with rollup, okay, you notice it right away. It says unexpected keyword near with, unrecognized keyword near rollup. So it doesn't like something that's in there. But I believe that if I take this whole thing, copy it to the clipboard, and paste it in, of course, well, I know, I've got it written down here. I know I did it, and I know it worked.
Don't you want the sales orders example database instead of AWD1100?
Oh, thank you. That would probably help, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So roll-up is kind of a goofy thing. My suggestion is whether it's this semester, next semester, it doesn't matter. But when you're working on something and you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm doing this, and it doesn't appear to be working right. All right, but one sec. I just go into Google and just type in MySQL rollup example. Boom. And there should be something in there. Yes.
It says on that MySQL thing, it says when you use rollup, you can also use an order by clause to sort the results.
All right.
In other words, rollup and order by are mutually exclusive in MySQL.
Okay. But what they don't tell you is there's a little trick you can use. All right? So let's use that little trick. Okay, so like you said, can't use order by. Okay, you can't do that, but I believe this will work. So get rid of the order by, and we'll say with rollup descending. It didn't like that, but I've done that before and it's worked. Okay, So it looks like, at least for that one, you would have to manually go in and add those up. So this was the query. We run the query. So you'll have to manually go in and add 140, 130, 119, 117, 116, 111, 106, and 105. All right? Questions?
And that was my question. What does roll supposed to do?
What roll-up is supposed to do is you'd get another row at the bottom here. It probably would either say Catherine Patterson or Matthew Berg, but it would have, or it would say null here, but it would have the total number right there.
So I thought that when you said or manually calculate the answer, you meant like do another line of
No.
SQL that you can't do it.
Well, I mean, you could probably do something like that too. You know, you could have done, I don't know. So we could have done like a sum of orders, you know, something like that, and then not even done a group by. You could do that too, yeah, that'd be fine. Any other questions on that one? Does everybody understand what's being asked? Does everybody understand how to do that one now? So you'd be comfortable doing it. Because like I said, the plan is when we're working on this stuff next semester is we're not going to spend a whole boatload of time going back over stuff we've already done. We'll do some review, all right, but there's just not enough time to go teach the class and then spend the next class going over half of the class we just did. Does that make sense?
Roll-up work without count. Does it do
It-
anything? I mean,
It would, if we wouldn't have had the count in there, it may have. I don't know. I'll let you try that one. Yes.
Can you switch or not switch, but add your command from order by to group by and then include the roll up?
Give it a try. If it works, fine. There's a lot of quirkiness in this, and the bad thing too is, like I showed you before, in the past, some stuff has worked that doesn't work now. And if you say, well, why is that? That's a good question, but I don't know what the answer is.
Can roll up not be used with group by either? It's still giving me one.
Then I go into Google and I key in, can I use MySQL group by with MySQL rollup? All right.
Weird because on the worksheet 1 it worked.
Yes. We had done a roll-up before.
Trying to work the
Now, if I do number 10, that's the same as number 9. That isn't fair, because then it means I'm doing 2 of them. So let's just talk about, in number 10, what you actually have to do in there and what you have to do as far as creating that calculated field. So I've got the select followed by all of the stuff. So I selected the customer first name, the customer last name, the order date, the ship date, the retail price, the quoted price. Those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, those 6 fields. That's what you were supposed to do. Then I said, fine. Then what I wanted to do was round. I'll put it in red, make it bigger so you can see it. All right, but I put round the retail price minus the quoted price. And I did that to 2 decimal places, and I saved it as savings. Now, since you have what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different fields in here, and you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 different tables in here. All right, you've got the customers table, the orders table, the products table, and the order details table. I actually ended up with 4 joins. I joined the customer and the order and the order details, and the product. No, I guess 3 of them. And how did I figure those out? I went back to that schema diagram and I said, how do all of these link together? All right. So the rest of it, the only difference between number 9 here and number 10 is in number 10, I added this one. I added that. All right. And then it said, show the first 100 records. How do I show the first 100 records? What is the command? Yes.
Sorry, I actually have a question about.
Okay.
The links up there. I did it and it worked, but I didn't do it like that. I just minused it. Like I didn't do round or anything. It didn't work.
It should work. What I did, though, with rounding it, I wanted to make sure there weren't going to be any funky things that came out to more than 2 decimal places. That's why I did it. Now, I know on the first one, some of you didn't use round. You casted, and that's okay. You just casted something in. You actually made the computer do more work than it had to do, but that's all right. All right. Remember, the answer is this. Limit 100. That's how you show the first 100 records. All right. It's the limit command with 100. So again, if I go back, and I've got it in here someplace. All right, I'd shown you this earlier. That's an old one. Okay, this is everything. And I just said that the tables that we're going to need are customers, orders, order details, and products. All right, so there's customers and there's orders. Well, that's pretty obvious that I'm going to link those two, and I'm going to link those two through some kind of an ID, a customer ID. Does that make sense? That's going to be one of the joins. All right. Then I want to be able to link the orders and the order details. You can see there's a line between those two. I'm going to link those on what? On the order number. So that's 2 of them. Then the order details and the products I can link. And what's in common there? They both have product number. That's the 3 linkings that I have to do. But I want the quoted price not equal to the detail price. So I'm going to have join the first one, where the first one, and join the second one, and join the third one, and do an inequality. So I'm going to say where the quoted price is not equal to the retail price. And you know how to do that. You can use either a less than followed by a greater than sign for not equal, or an exclamation point followed by an equal sign. Questions? And when I did the order by on mine, I also did the order by on this. All right. I didn't use the as saving, so I did the order by based on that. Limit 100. All right. Do you want a break or do you want to do the last 2? All right, we'll do the last 2, and then the rest of the period will be yours. So let's look at number 11. Write, execute a query that shows only the vendor name and product wholesale price, but only for those vendors' names that either start with an S or end with an S, and have a wholesale price between $10 and $20. So this was a very contrived query. If you had some boss who asked you for stuff like that, you'd probably look at her or at him like they had a screw loose. Why do you want people whose names start with S or end with S? But the idea was it was going to force you to go in and use the like command, because you didn't have to use the like command earlier, but now you have to. All right. Sort the results based on the wholesale price descending, then vendor order name ascending. How many records met that criteria? So let's take a look at the query. And again, if you got yours done and you say, I didn't do it like yours, and I got the same answer, that's totally fine. There are a lot of different ways that virtually every one of these could conceivably be done, and that's okay. All right? So, first thing we wanted in here was the vendor name, and I did preface it v.ven name. All right, so that's it so far. We want the vendor name, and we want the wholesale price. We're getting the vendor name from the vendors table. We're getting the wholesale price from the product vendors table. So we have to join the two. We do have the field in common between the two, so it's where v dot vendor ID equals PV dot vendor ID. All right. Now there's more to it than that. There is more to it than that. But let's just take a look. If we did this, I like to sometimes break them up like this, and does it run? All right. It is running. I'm getting 90 total back. I can already tell that some of these aren't going to meet my criteria. Correct? Some of them don't start with S or end with S. Some of them are not between $10 and $20. All right. But the point is, doing it this way, I know, looking at this, that whatever answer I get done, I end up with, shouldn't be 90. Does that make sense to everybody? Yes.
I was going to say, to save you time from copying and pasting, if you click Get Auto Saved Query from
Okay.
SQL, it'll,
And where's that?
when you go back to, like, you're going to enter another query, and it's at the bottom, Get Auto
Ah, okay. All right, thank you. All right, I just want to finish this up. So, we had criteria. We had a bunch of criteria. And again, this is the way I did this. Sometimes when you read this criteria, you might say, I'm not sure what you were asking for. And I purposely made this a little hard to read because when I was out there doing this stuff professionally, what I found out was a lot of times that's the kind of requirements you get. They're very fuzzy as far as what the person is asking for, or the company is asking for, or the department is asking for. You just don't know. All right, so this was my take on it. So I said vend name like all right? And you should be able to figure out what that's doing right now. Because that's saying a vendor name that starts with S or a vendor name that ends with S. So it's S %, which means it starts with S followed by 0 or more characters. And then %S, which means 0 or more characters ending with an S. We're still not done. You hear me? We're still not done. But I'm going to take that and I'm going to run it. Remember, I had 90. All right? Now I'm down to 30. So that threw out 60 of the records that I had. Okay, so there were 60 records that either did not start with an S, that did not start with an S, or did not end with an S. All right? So we've got those. We're still not done. All right? So we need another and. Again, just to make sure I didn't screw up anything with my typing, and I did. Unknown column. Because I spell wholesale wrong. All right, so from where we started, we're down to what? We're down to 8. Now, again, like I said, if you didn't read this the way that I read it, where I had an and, you might had an or, etc., that's when, if you are working with someone or for someone, you have to ask them. It's much better to speak up and sound foolish than it is not to say anything and be found out that you're foolish later. Abraham Lincoln had something, a quote like that. I wasn't around then, so I don't know what it was, but you can look it up. But it was something along those lines. Any questions on that one? So again, I ended up with 8. All right. Then number 12. Write, execute a query that shows the customer's first name, customer's last name. So we know those will come from the customer table. Order number, ship date, cast it. Now when you do this, just so you know, when you do this, the reason that I put down there cast this is that right now, the order dates and the ship dates, right now, they show the time. If you do not enter the time when you put in a record, it defaults to midnight. So you've got all these records with 00:00:00, which is stupid. All right? But a lot of times when people set stuff up, they set it up as a timestamp. Many of you use timestamp when you did the first worksheet for answering one or more of the questions. And timestamp is actually used a lot. But I believe that timestamp gives you, time stamp. Gives you the date and the time. So by casting it like this, all right, by casting it this way, we're going to remove that 00:00:00. All right? And it's wide enough with what I'm asking anyway, because we're asking for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 7 fields. That if you leave those times in there, it's going to run off into the next column, which makes it very hard to read. All right? Okay, so again, hopefully by now, most of this stuff, you've done it enough that it's just making sense. Now, before we finish this, we will in just a second. There's not that much left to type in. But take a look at that and map that up and make sure that I didn't miss any fields. You'll notice again, I aliased here, so I aliased every table name there. So I know I'm going to have customers C, orders O, and products P. I know that. That'll be the next thing I have. Plus I aliased here, so we had better looking headings. All right? So that'll be from customers C. The order in which you do these too doesn't make any difference. Orders O. Oh, I think is there a mistake in here? No, there's not. Okay. Order details OD and customers C.
Is the shipping order supposed to be OD?
What's that?
Is the shipping order supposed to be OD?
That's a good question. Is that under here? Is that what you're saying?
No, there's no OD, right?
No, I think you need the orders details because you have to join two of the tables together. All right, we'll find out when we get all done here. So again, when you look here, I am joining what? 1, 2, 3, 4 tables together. If I made that too hard to read, then put each one on its own line.
We have customers each license that
Oh, all right, customers. Oh, that should be products. Thank you. Oops. All right. So now I know that since I'm joining together 1, 2, 3, 4 tables, I'm going to have 3 different join statements. Does that make sense to everyone? All right. So when I start to look at this, again, if I bring this back, I can see that if I want to join the customer in the orders table, I'm going to do them by customer ID. If I want to bring together the order number and the order detail tables, all right, that's going to be on order number. And if I want to do the order details and the products table, all right, that's going to be on product number. All right, the reason I need order details is I need information from these 3 tables. And this table right there is not directly joinable to either of those tables. So I have to use the intermediate table. You find you have to do that kind of stuff a lot. All right. Now back in the olden days, like in the 80s and the 70s, and even before that, when they did this stuff, you may have heard this term already, they used a flat file. And what that means is they put everything in one table. So yeah, that made it a lot easier. Wouldn't have to do any of these bleeping joins or anything. Yeah, but the tables were humongous. And they were very hard to administer. All right, so we've got this. So let's do our 3 joins. So where, and again, the order in that we do these in does not matter. The customer ID equals O dot customer ID and so right there, those are my 3 joins. That's the query so far. It's almost done, but it's not done. Why? Because at the very bottom of this, if you look right here, the very bottom, it said, but only for those orders that were shipped exactly 1 day after they were ordered. So basically, what do I want to do? I want to take and I want to add one to the order date and see then if it's equal to the ship date. That makes sense? And although it sounds kind of quirky, that is the kind of thing that you might be asked to do in a database query. All right? Or maybe you want the ones that were not sent out a day afterwards. So you know, because you have to go and light a fire under somebody's butt to find out why isn't this stuff that's being ordered, why isn't it being sent out right away? All right. And if you've ever dealt with, it's going to sound like I'm slamming them, and I'm really and truly not trying to, but if you've ever dealt with marketing people, because I have, they'll ask you stuff that it's so frickin' bizarre. You're like, why the hell would anybody ever want to know that? But you know what? That's not your job. It's not your job to say that's a really stupid thing to ask for. All right. You make comments like that if you don't want to keep your job. All right. But that's fine. You want that? I'll give it to you. Whatever you want. All right. So again, there were different ways of doing this, but the way I did it was I put one last and down here. And I used date add. I did it like that. And the add has got 2 D's in it. Let's make sure that I wrote it correctly. All right.
Need order date, you have
I need what?
order. You have order date. So
Yep. I have a tendency to do that for whatever reason. So, when you look at the ship date and you look at the order date, there should be one in between each one of those. So again, this was all of it. Kind of big. Let me put a couple of these on there, combine them together so you can see all of it at once. All right. I used date add. Now, to me, one of the quirky things about this language, why do you have 2 different date functions? One that's called date add, which is date underscore add, and the other one that's called date diff that doesn't have an underscore in it. All right. My guess is they were probably written by 2 different people, because the chances are pretty good if they were both written by the same person, they would have done a better job of being uniform in the way they do things. But since they were written by 2 different people, they're not. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I don't know. Now, if you type all of this in, and you're like, I typed it in, and I know it's right, but it still doesn't work. Then, I mean, there's all sorts of things that it could be. If you name something different than I did, all right, even though I gave you all that stuff, but if you changed a name, or as Brady just saw with me, instead of order date, I wrote order date. All right. You've got to go back and take a look. It's not mandatory that any of this stuff be in capital letters. What I tried to do was to take everything that was a keyword and put it in capital letters, just because I thought it'd be easier for you to figure out what's going on there. Again, if I wanted to be super anal about this, I could have even done this, date add, and then I could have moved this. All right, something like that. Again, is any of that stuff mandatory? You know that it's not. I don't remember. I'll run it again in just a second. Again, what I'm more concerned with is, do you understand what's going on? I'll be really amazed if you'd ever come back here after you get jobs, and if it's 5 years, 10 years, or whatever. You say, you always told us that I'm doing database work, and you always told us that somebody is going to ask you for something at some time that you're going to think is kind of nuts. That's never happened to me. I've never had that happen. I've had people who've gotten jobs in database who have come back and said, You wouldn't believe the kind of crap they asked me to do. I mean, it's like I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, well, who the whatever would want this stuff? And I think I've told you about this already, but I had a student, John Sissons. The guy worked at a junkyard. I don't know how, but somehow my boss and him connected, my boss at the time. And John's not a young guy when he started the program. When I say not young, he's probably in his mid-30s. He's a young person, but he wasn't a young guy. All right? As far as getting into IT at that time. And he had a good job, he made a lot of money, but he didn't feel very fulfilled. He ended up coming in and talking to my boss, talking to me, and he went into the program. After he graduated, he loved databases. I mean, he just went nuts over them, literally. He got a job with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. And he's the guy, I've mentioned this story before, that told me once the biggest query he ever wrote was like 16 pages long. So imagine, multiply this by about 20. Why? Because he was going through a database with millions of records looking for one record that met a criteria. Now, he didn't write all that. He wrote a bit of it, got it to work, added some more to it, got it to work, added some more to it, got it to work. All right? That's the way that you have to learn to do these things. It's the same way as when you program. Don't sit there if you've got a program that's supposed to do 8 things, write all 8. Get one to work, good. Test it, good, it works. Add the second thing. Get it to work. Make sure you didn't break what you put in there to begin with. And add things like that. Makes it much easier. You become a better programmer or a better database person when you do that. All right, the question got asked, how many? I've got 745. Is that what you said, Tiffany?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, so last call. Any questions on that? That should give you a really good start. But I will tell you, I'm going to be a stickler. In other words, these are your requirements. All right, I'm not going to say these are your requirements. Do you like them? Because it doesn't matter. Imagine that right now I'm some company who have given you these requirements. Anything you don't follow, I will take points off for. Does that make sense? And when you look at the last questions that are on here, which are numbers 13 through whatever, 13, 14, 15, and 16, I guess now. Bring it up on here. It says you are to create your own queries. Add comments. All right? And all you have to basically do is echo in the comments, I'm joining together the products table and the product vendors table so that I can display this. That's it. All right, but I'm forcing you into putting some documentation. Every year that I teach, I keep saying I've got to do a better job of forcing people to document. And one of the things I want to do this summer is when I go over to St. Louis, because I'm going to be spending more time over there this summer, is to talk to Evan and ask him what he does as far as forcing people to document. All right. Any last questions? Yes.
Since you said the comments were part of your grade, like, do you want us to, like, each line have a comment, or just like a
No,
sort of like
just
a
the thing at the beginning, like a prologue at the beginning. I mean, if you think something else in there warrants a comment, you could put it in. When you're writing a query on 5 tables like number 16, if you start putting comments in there, it's going to be very hard for the person who maintain it from you to understand. If you just have one big comment at the beginning, it'll make it much easier for them to
Do you
understand.
like how it can pretty much like query itself?
No, I want you to say, like I said, let's suppose that we're not doing this, but let's suppose that you were going to say something like this. Select, I don't know, P dot product name, V dot vendor name from products P, vendors V, and I'm not even sure if I can join these, that's not what's important, but where P dot product ID equals V dot vendor ID, or product ID, something like that. So I'm just pretending here that's your query. I'm not saying it's even a query. But then what I'm saying is you want to come up here and you want to say, I hate the way that these things are. Okay, whatever.
I know.
Yeah. So it's a comment, and I just say something like joining together.
Just think of it as rephrasing like the earlier questions.
That's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Joining together. Yeah, I guess you
Make
could.
up like your own rules anyway.
Products.
Just tell them what the rules that you're making are.
Yeah, products and vendors tables. So that the product name and vendor name are shown.
That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure.
Just something like that. I don't want you to go too nuts with it. But again, what I want is when a prospective person is looking at this to see whether or not they'll hire you, they want to see whether or not you follow the directions. All right? So there's a difference. Some of you might put in this whole thing in here. You might put in this. Some of you, I know that Tiffany and Valerie, you just did text files, which are fine. All right? Now, if you're going to do that, what you might want to do is you might want to add the stuff in there, because if somebody's looking at it, they're like, what the heck is this?
Oh, like you need the questions.
Yeah, you might want to grab that information and just copy it in. You don't. What is that? Is that the second one?
Yeah.
I will email everybody a copy of it. Or I don't know if I did or not, but I will.
Yeah, I have it, but I don't have an email, so I don't remember how I got it.
I'll tell you what, I'll email everybody, both of them, the first worksheet and the second worksheet. That way, if you want to do anything with the first one, as far as, fixing it up or whatever, you can do that, and with the second one. Again, I do want you to understand, this is your sell job. That's what your portfolio is. And it's where it is today is your sell job is what's going to get you an interview. Whether you get the job or not will be basically, a lot of it will be how you perform at the interview. But today it's kind of hard with some places when you have no real world experience to get that first interview. That's what the portfolio is designed to help you do. I'm not guaranteeing that, you get this portfolio and you're going to get interviews and you're going to get a job. No. But you write a good portfolio, the chances are much better that you're going to get an interview. All right? All right, so like I said, I'll email those to you, both of them, right now. That's all that I've got.